Hi there, my name is David Schlumph. I'm a company member here at Wagon Wheel Theatre. I'm playing Billy Flynn in Chicago, which opens here on Wednesday, July 18th and runs through the 28th, the following Saturday. Looking forward to it.
Who is Billy Flynn? How does he fit into the Chicago?
Sure. So Chicago is a story about, it's a bigger story about adultery and treachery, but it's also more simplistically a story about these wives that are fed up with their husbands and get frustrated and kill them. And Billy Flynn is the best defense lawyer in town in Chicago. And he takes care of all these women and makes sure that all of them get off, and then afterwards, usually they pick up a pretty good entertainment contract. It's kind of a cool part of the vaudeville style and vaudeville portion of the story. The fact that at that time in the 20s, this kind of news was so spectacular that it would create careers for them, despite the fact that it was on such malicious, intent, such malicious grounds. So yeah.
So, I mean, is there a kind of a modern comparison? Like, I kind of, infamous people like the Octomom or something, or...
I mean, a little bit more treacherous than the Octomom, I would say. I mean, I think what's really cool about this is that it becomes a courtroom drama towards the end, and the fact that, it's so much like, whether it's the O.J. trial or the Casey Anthony trial, all of these high-profile trials, the fact that we kind of sensationalize the experience of these people who are accused of such heinous acts, but they've apparently done these things, and there's something about it that we just can't, that we're drawn to, we can't look away from. It's like we say, it's like a bus crash, you just can't turn away, It's awful and horrible, and I couldn't stop staring at it. I think there's something really fascinating about someone that's that different, that lives in like that different of a world, that makes decisions like murdering their husband,
So is there a certain way to play Billy, or do you bring your own ideas to him, or how do you play him?
Sure. I mean, I think that each production is different. This was originally directed and choreographed by Bob Fosse, but what's fantastic about this production is that Scott Michaels has really, turned it into his own production. It's very much more about the vaudeville and about the jazz and about the 20s, the roaring 20s, and so I think, we take our character development from, cues from him, and so I think this Billy is definitely he's definitely a vaudeville salesman. He's definitely a sweet talker and a smooth talker, but not necessarily as, I think, smarmy as he was in the first productions. He's definitely a little more of a sweet talker. So yeah.
Okay. Do you? A lot of people might remember the movie version with Richard Gere.
Yeah, totally.
So is this different? How does this contrast?
Sure. I mean, I think that this production is definitely informed by that, by the movie. I mean, that's definitely something that everybody knows, and it's an Academy Award-winning movie. I have to admit that Richard Gere wasn't my favorite person in that movie. So I actually haven't seen it in a while. I personally don't like to watch movies before I do a show. Because I like finding all of my work in the script and not necessarily in someone else's interpretation, because I think that the only way that I can create the best Billy for me is to look at the words and find a life out of that connects to me, and then tell that story, as opposed to trying to tell the story that Richard Gere told when he did the movie. So I think that you'll see some things from the movie that's pretty cool, just like you'd see at another Chicago. But I think that this Chicago is pretty cool. I mean, just with the fact that we have a different Velma and a different Roxy and a different Billy, and everybody's really bringing a very unique spin on these characters.
Is this the first time you've ever been in a production of Chicago, and is this a role that you sought out, or you was hoping to get?
It's definitely one that people said that I would play at one point. So I'm really excited to be Billy. I mean, he's definitely smooth and he's very, very smart. But he's also a little dirty, so I kind of like that. I like that he's a good balance of a lot of different things, and it keeps him very interesting. You never quite know exactly whether he's just smooth talking you or whether he's really giving you the truth. So I like that about him.
So is he a hero, anti-hero, villain? How does he fit into the whole idea of...
I mean, I suppose in some way he's an anti-hero. I mean, he's certainly there's a line about Billy being the hero, the voice of the downtrodden, which is fascinating. It's just kind of, it depends on how you want to look at the story. It depends on how you want to look at O.J. Simpson's, defense attorneys. Are they the anti-hero or are they the villain? And that's what makes this show fascinating, is that depending on how you look at that situation, that's how you're going to interpret these different characters and the circumstances that are going on. So yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the music. I mean, a lot of people know the music.
Yeah.
Just what are your opinions about the music? Are there certain songs that really compel you? Or
yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it's amazing doing this show right after Carousel, because Carousel is such a lush, gorgeous, almost operatic score. And then we go into Chicago, that's so jazz, and it's hot, and it's fast, and the percussion is amazing. We were just saying last night that we're all excited to have our first musical rehearsal today, because the music is just so slimy and so good and gooey that you dig your fingers into it, and that'll be a completely different. It will bring a completely different aspect of the characters and of the storytelling to the work. So, Chicago's a deceptive play. People think that the music is so great and the dancing is so awesome that it's just going to figure itself out. But Scott's really done an amazing job, because there's a lot of pitfalls in it, and Scott's done an amazing job making sure that the story is told using the dance and using the music and with these scenes. And so the music itself, I think, it's really fantastic music, and it's great that people know that music, but they're going to come in and have a different experience with that music because they're going to see the dance and see the story that's being told with it, and that's going to be what's really cool.
It just speaks to my question.
Okay.
As far as, a lot of the songs, All That Jazz is one.
Sure.
What are some of the other more well-known ones?
All That Jazz, Class, All I Care About Is Love, We Both Reach for the Gun, let me see.
When You're Good to Mama.
When You're Good to Mama, Mr. Cellophane, Me and My Baby, a little bit of Good, Class, and Razzle Dazzle towards the end. I mean, it's all some of the best Kander and Ebb music they ever wrote. So.
Well, this musical is kind of more the adult of this season, I would say. I mean,
Sure.
how adult would you say this show is? Is it PG-13 or?
I would call it PG-13. I don't personally think that it's I don't think it's a rated R production at all. I think it's suggestive in the fact that these are sensationalized circumstances. I mean, we're talking about women who have killed their husbands. And so again, it's as PG-13 as CNN or Fox News is. I mean, these circumstances and it's what you choose to see. It's not, how do I say that? I think it's a PG-13 production because it's, how do I say this? Let's see. I don't personally find it to be uncomfortably suggestive. I think it tells real stories about people in real situations that are not necessarily the prettiest. It definitely is. It's a little scantily clad, but not overly so. And it's a sexy show, but it's not uncomfortable by any means. And I don't think it's rated R at all. I think it's definitely a PG-13. It's been interesting hearing people talk about it being the adult show, because in my opinion, I think there was more stuff in like Legally Blonde that was blatantly kind of, you weren't expecting to hear some of those words. There's some language in this show, but that's about it. It's entirely suggestive, and it's entirely left up to your imagination.
Okay. So, about the period. It's set in the 1920s, you said?
20s, roaring 20s.
How do you guys bring that to life on this theater and around? Is it staging, costumes, or?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely costumes. I think it's also some vocal choices. you're not going to hear the exact, like you hear in the movies at the time, where people are going to talk like this, and we're not going to do the whole show like this, because I think that would drive people crazy after a while. But you hear a little hint of that, and you hear the sound of of Chicago and that city dialect. So I think between the costumes and the way that people speak and the interactions, I think that's where you're going to get a lot of the period. You're also going to get a lot of that in the choreography, because it's really strictly jazz, and it's really cool musical theater jazz that was also kind of translating out of the vaudeville time. So you get a lot of the vaudeville, a lot of the jazz, a lot of the costume, dialect. It's all there.
For someone who may not be familiar with jazz per se, can you kind of explain what you think jazz is as far as dancing, as far as music, as far as attitude?
Sure. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not a specialized dancer by any means. So jazz, but I think that jazz definitely came out as kind of along the same time with musical theater, a transition of musical theater where I don't know that I can speak to jazz, David. Let's see. Jazz. What is jazz? I know jazz music.
Okay, well, how is the dancing in this show different than the other dancing in styles?
Then like, I think that this is definitely going to be more like jazzy musical theater style dance, as opposed to like a carousel that's going to be much more ballet. Again, like those two are really good comparisons, because the ballet, they use a lot of the ballet to tell the story in carousel, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Not necessarily something you see in musical theater, at all anymore in the shows that they create. So we do that now, just with a different, with this being written I think in the 70s. No, it was later than that. But bringing in the jazz and bringing in the just a later period of dance. It's it's the same thing in that musical theater is using the physicalized form to tell story, physical storytelling with dance. It's just a different period.
Is part of that kind of attitude?
Sure, it's part of an attitude. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, let's talk a little bit about yourself. This is the second season you've been here.
Yeah.
You did Corny Collins last year for Hairspray.
I did.
What brought you back this year? Are you just in for this show, or are you staying for the rest of the season?
I'm here for the last 3 shows. I had some exciting family stuff that I did this summer. It was my grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary and 30th anniversary of a family reunion. So I had some. It was a big summer for my family. So I'm glad to have been able to kind of split my summer and give them half of it, and then come and give Wagon Wheel the other half. So I'm thrilled to be doing this. I'm doing Charles and Blithe Spirit, and then the review at the end, I Love a Piano, is going to be fantastic too. I'm just starting to learn more about I Love a Piano, and that's going to be really neat. And I've never done a Noel Coward before, and I've never worked with Andy and Ben as directors, so I'm really excited about that too.
So, now you're originally from Florida, right?
I was born in Atlanta. I lived in Charlotte. I lived in Kentucky, and that's where I graduated high school. Then I went to Florida and got my undergrad. I've lived all over the country: New York, Colorado, Orlando, Chicago now. So.
Okay. Well, anything else about yourself or the show, or anything you'd like people to know about, or to encourage them to come out?
I would just say it's a really fun show. The Wagon Wheel's never done it before, and it's one of those classics that theaters, lean on and do all the time. So I'm really excited for this community to come and see a show like this. I think it's always amazing too to come and see a show like this, where the storytelling was written to be set in a certain time, it was composed at a certain time, and here we are 30, 40 years later, and yet still these situations are totally real, totally alive. We still sensationalize these circumstances where these people are doing these horrible acts, and yet we can't look away. It's fascinating, and so it's a really, really cool, sexy piece that uses a cool vaudeville style to really tell that, to expose that human truth, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to talk with you again.
You too.